Open your books, if you would, to page 27. All we'll do today is the Wanderer. We won't get to the Dream of the Rood. The Seafarer, not the Wanderer. I sing a true song of myself, tell of my journeys, how in days of toil I've often suffered troubled times, hard heartache, come to know on the keel of a ship many of care's dwellings, terrible tossing of the waves where the anxious night watch often held me at the ship's stem when it knocks against the cliffs. Notice how the speaker begins. Okay, what kind of song or story or tale is he going to sing? True one. In other words, not a work of fiction. This is my autobiography, the speaker is essentially saying. What's it about? My journeys. Okay? When? Days of toil. Okay? Where? On the keel of a ship, many of care's dwellings, terrible tossing of the waves. So he's going to talk about his life's journeys on the ocean. Okay? So, pinched with cold were my feet, bound by frost in cold fetters, while care seethed hot around my heart. Hunger tore from within my sea-weary mind. Notice all the juxtapositions. Okay? First of all, his feet are cold. Why? Because he's not wearing shoes? Possibly. Why else? The ocean is cold. He's probably in what's called a coracle, which is this little boat. They're more prominent in Ireland than in England. But it's a one-person boat. Don't think like a kayak, because a kayak is long and slender. This is about 6 feet long, okay, and 2 to 3 feet wide. Okay? Somewhat shallow. It's essentially for one person to sit out on an ocean or a pond or a lake and to row through with your hands. Okay? And obviously, if you're in the ocean on one of these things, waves are going to splash over, water's going to be in the bottom, your feet are going to freeze. Okay? So his feet are pinched with cold, bound by frost and cold fetters, while care seethed hot around his heart. So his feet, or his body, is cold. His heart is boiling. It's burning. While hunger from within, or tore from within, his sea-weary mind. Notice the three things. You've got the body, the heart, and the mind. Okay? The heart is really more the soul. The mind could be the spirit, which is different than the soul. Okay? Notice the hot cares are around his heart, like his soul is in turmoil. Okay? So this is how he begins. That man does not know. What man? He whose lot is fairest on land. Again, another juxtaposition. The speaker is on a little boat out in the ocean. But the person who has an easy life on land, in fact, it's not just an easy life. It's that man whose lot is fairest on land, who's got the best life on land. He doesn't know what? How I, wretched with care, dwelt all winter on the ice-cold sea in the paths of exile. Same exact word we saw in the Wanderer. Okay? His paths of exile are where? On the ocean. Okay, the restlessness, the footsteps of the exile. Obviously, it's kind of hard to leave footsteps in the ocean. Deprived of dear kinsmen, hung with icicles of frost while hail flew in showers. So, the person who has an easy life on land won't understand what my life is like out on the sea, where I'm deprived of kinsmen, where I'm cold, where I suffer the elements. All right? I heard nothing there but the noise of the sea, the ice-cold waves. Compared to the man fairest on land, what is he? In his hall. Okay? The wild swan song sometimes served as my music. Well, what serves as the music for the man fairest on land? The sound of the shope singing. The gannets call and the curlews cry for the laughter of men, as opposed to the laughter of men in the hall of the man fairest on land. The seagulls singing for mead drink. That is, he doesn't have any literal mead to drink, but the guy who lives the life fairest on land does. So we have ships of this speaker continuously juxtaposed with the ease of somebody on land. Think of the sea, think of the land. Unless you're in California or Japan or other parts around the ring of fire, the land is pretty stationary, right? It doesn't move much. What about life on the ocean? It's tossing and turning. It's always changing. Okay? Storms beat the stone cliffs where the turn answered them. Icy feathered, often screamed dewy feathered. No sheltering family could bring consolation to my desolate soul. It's like the tern and the eagle are calling to each other. Okay? But the speaker has no one calling to him. He is all alone. Broken off from human society. Separated from human society. A gloss for the two words "and so." And the gloss talks about the Old English word "forthon," which can work in a way. That is, it can point back to the lines that came before, or the words that came before, or it can point forward to the words that come after. And it can be translated thus, meaning everything that came before is summed up with the thus, or it can be therefore, which points forward. It can be because or since. It entirely depends upon the context. And, or therefore, or thus, or since. He who has tasted life's joy in towns, suffered few sad journeys, scarcely believes. Okay. Who? The person who has tasted life's joy in towns. Well, what is included in life's joy in towns? If you live in a town, what can you always? Warm bed. Food. Drink. Kombucha. Wine, women, and song, kind of a thing. And that person has suffered few sad journeys. Why? Where have they tasted life's joys? In towns. The implication is someone who is rooted, someone who is stable, someone who is moving about. All right? That person scarcely believes. Why? Because they're proud and puffed with wine. Well, why are they proud? Probably because they have stuff. And they're puffed up with wine, merely drink it. They scarcely believe what I weary. Notice, the speaker is weary. Are they weary? No. They're proud. It's hard to be weary and proud at the same time. Usually if you're proud, everything's going well for you. It means you're not weary. You're not tired. You're not worn out. What I, weary, have often had to endure in my seafaring. It's a completely different world to them. They don't understand it. What does he had to endure? The night shadow darkened. What does the person in town experience? Not today, but let's say 900 AD England. Okay, you go in a room, do you flip the switch? No, you have to light a fire, you have to light a candle. But how does that differ from life on the ocean? Kind of hard to keep a candle lit in a boat with the sea spray, washing all over. So the night shadow darkens. He experiences the coming of the night. Whereas if you're in town, you're in your hall, or in your hovel, or in your hut, whatever it is, but you wait.
Far from land would a person in a coracle expect to go normally?
Hold on to that
He
thought.
paddles with his arms.
Yeah.
Presumably sail if he's going to be out.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Hold on to that thought, because he's going to get to that in a moment. Snow came from the north, frost bound the ground, hail fell on earth, coldest of grains. But if you're in a hall, you're not aware of that. I mean, yeah, you might pull open a flap and say, look, it's snowing or hailing or frosting or whatever. But you're not physically, suffering it. Whereas if you're out on a boat and the boat doesn't have a house and a hatch and all that kind of stuff, you're experiencing it. Okay? So, forthon, therefore, thus, because, since, however you want to translate that, they what? Look at the next half line. My heart thoughts compel me now. Heart thoughts, not my modia thought, not my mind's thoughts. What's the difference between the thoughts of the heart and the thoughts of the mind? Okay.
The thoughts of the heart are less reasonable?
Okay, possibly. They're not reason.
No.
It's not rationality, in other words. It's not logic. So what are the thoughts of the heart? The longings of the heart. The desires of the heart. Okay. St. Augustine, Bishop of Hippo, guy who wrote City of God, said every person, I think he says this in his Confessions, says every person has a God-sized hole in their heart. And what do? They run around life trying to fill that hole with everything but God. He talks about himself in his Confessions. He tried to fill it with women. Okay? Other people tried to fill it with drink, with drugs, with possessions. The only problem with that hole is only one thing can fill it. Only God. Okay? So, his heart thoughts compel him, his longings of his soul, to do what? To try for myself the high seas. Well, what does that word try mean? If you try to do calculus, if you try to do, pick your thing, what are you doing? You're attempting it. Okay? Or, if you have a trial by jury, what is being done? Something that is being proven. Those words, try and trial, prove, test, they all come from medieval alchemy. And the alchemical tradition, which had as its ultimate goal one thing: produce the philosopher's stone. So that you can bring Voldemort back? No. Okay? What was the goal of the philosopher's stone? Pardon?
It was merely a secondary goal.
Yeah, that was a secondary goal. What was the goal of the philosopher's stone?
To live forever?
Was it to live forever and have, untold riches? No. That's a popularization. That's a side effect. The real goal of alchemy was transformation. Okay? The real wealth was eternal glory. The real transformation, the turning from base metal to gold, was the turning from base material, okay, to an eternal material. That's why almost all of the alchemists were Christian scientists, so to speak. Not Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, not that group, okay? The precursors of scientists and such. So when he says, to try for myself the high seas, he's talking about proving himself against the high seas. Proving what? Refining, clarifying, removing all the rust, all the filth, all the dirt, okay? Purifying himself. What's he talking about? An ascetic feat. This is called ascesis. So what's an ascetic feat? When you deny yourself something, for what purpose? To purify, to cleanse. Like people today, you'll read stuff on the internet, purifying your gut, drink such X, Y, or Z, and it'll cleanse your gut of all its infirmities and all its impurities, all this kind of stuff. Do a monthly fast, 24 hours, cleanse and feel all clean, okay. That's this. That's for an entirely physical reason. He's not talking about a physical reason here, okay. This kind of ascetic feat can be fasting, like Christ's 40 days in the wilderness. It can be prayer, okay. It can be almsgiving, giving stuff to the poor and such. He's trying himself against the sea. Like every July, there's a race in California. It's called the Badwater Ultra Marathon. It's 154 miles. There's one guy in Tennessee that runs it. He's from Murfreesboro. He's in his 60s. It starts at Badwater Death Valley, the lowest place in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? It's the second lowest place on the planet. The lowest place, right, is the Dead Sea in Israel. It's like 250 feet below sea level, okay? Death Valley. And you run from there to the top of Mount Whitney, 154 miles away. And it begins on July 15th. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Death Valley. I've driven through it several times. Death Valley on July 15th, average temperature during the day is about 125 in the shade. I take that back, in the sun. It's hot enough that runners have to change their shoes. I think it is, it depends on the runner, on how fast they're going and such. But they have to change them usually about 5 or 6 times at least because the soles melt while they're running on the asphalt. About every 5-10 miles, people have to jump into literally like coffins full of ice water to lower their body temperatures. So they can get up and run again. Why would you do this? I mean, people end up with their toes all swollen and black, faces chafed and blistered.
Then you get to be the guy who tells
You get to be the guy in Tennessee, the one guy in Tennessee who can wear the T-shirt.
And then college
Because you
professors
can't,
talk about
because you can't buy the T-shirts. You only get the T-shirt if you finish. And not everybody finishes. Okay?
People die running this race.
Yeah, some people. Yeah. Body overheats. I mean, they just go into a coma. That's why, you've got a support group. Every runner has a support group. They're with them the whole way. Driving in a van. Okay? Because you got to make sure, the body doesn't 106 degrees. Because once it hits that high, you're pretty much gone.
How long does the race last?
Till you finish. Or call it quits. Some people finish in about 30 hours. I think it starts at midnight on July 15th and then goes so that they're finishing at Mount Whitney, usually about a day and a half to 2 days later. I think the slowest one's usually 40, 42 hours. Okay.
Do they
I mean, these are-
stop for anything?
No, it's,
They don't stop and eat.
no, they eat on the run. Non-stop. I mean, some of them, I mean, they're not running, 6-minute miles. I mean, they're doing like 12, 13-minute, so they're running fairly slow. I mean, there are some people who run it fairly fast. I think the fastest it's been finished is about 26 hours, which is a pretty good pace. There's one guy who's won it several years in a row, but he's built for this kind of thing. It's all he does. Okay? So they're proving themselves. They're testing themselves. Same kind of thing. There's a run across the Sahara Desert. The freaking Sahara Desert. Okay? They've got support groups keeping them along the way. Diana Naya just swam from Cuba to Florida. It's 110 miles. Damn. The whole way. She never left the water. She didn't, no floaties, She ate while swimming. I mean, she would tread water and eat. She kept throwing it up, but she'd get a little bit of nutrient, Okay? Why? Because it's there. Why do people climb Mount Everest? Because it's there. So, all of those are to test the limits of physical endurance. He's testing the limits of spiritual endurance. All right?
What line are we on now?
We're still on 35. Thoughts compel him to try for myself the high seas, the tossing salt streams. My heart's desire urges my spirit time and again to travel, so that I might seek far from here a foreign land. What does he mean, far from here a foreign land? Does he mean I'm going to jump off, let's say he's on the western coast of Ireland. I'm going to jump off into the Atlantic in my little coracle and I'm going to discover the new world? No. See, the foreign land he's talking about is not a land you can reach by a boat. It's a pilgrimage. He's talking about his sea journey as a metaphor for the journey of life. And the foreign land he wants to seek is heaven. But what kind of journey is that? Hard. It's not easy. Okay? And the way you get there is through this kind of effort, he is suggesting. You don't get there living the fairest life on land. You don't get there proud and puffed up with wine. All right? So, no man on earth is so proud in spirit, nor so gifted in grace, or so keen in youth, keen meaning sharp, nor so bold in deeds, nor so beloved of his Lord, that he never has sorrow over his seafaring. That is, no one has a life that's just perfect from beginning to end. Everyone suffers. Okay? That is, even those who are proud in spirit suffer a little being taken down a few notches. Even those who are gifted in grace endure. Even those who are keen in youth grow old. Even those who are bold in deeds sometimes lose. Even those who are beloved of their Lord sometimes fall out of favor. That he never has sorrow over his seafaring, what? When he sees what the Lord might have in store for him. That is, the person who sees what the Lord has in store for him never has sorrow over the journey. What does he mean, never has sorrow? Does he mean never has pain? No. He means never has despair. This person who sees what the Lord has in store for him keeps going. takes what nature throws at him. The hailstones, the frost, the snow, the dark of night, and keeps on going. All right? He has no thought of the harp or the taking of rings. Where do those occur? Back on land. That is, the person who has engaged this journey, this being the starting point, and this being the destination. Okay? The person who has begun this journey doesn't think of what? Earthly wealth, the taking of rings, doesn't think of the thought of the harp, that is earthly pleasure.
When he says rings, it's like
He means rings, yeah. Rings you put on your finger, rings you put on your wrist, rings you put on your upper arm. Warriors would wear these. Okay? Nor the pleasures of woman or joy in the world. That is, if you're aiming for here, you don't think of all these other things. And when he says, nor the pleasures of women, he's not talking y'all got to be celibate. It's not what he means. He doesn't mean that there is no pleasure in women or men. He means those don't last. What did the wanderer say? Here, mon is fleeting. Here, fel bith lana. Here, friend bith lana. Friend is fleeting, wealth is fleeting, man is fleeting, woman is fleeting. The one thing he doesn't say is here lif bith lana. Here life is fleeting. Okay? No. This person who's thinking of this, who sees the joys that God has in store, doesn't think of the pleasure of the harp, the taking of rings, pleasures of woman, or joy, nor anything else but the tumbling waves. The tumbling waves. What does that mean? What does he think about?
the task at hand.
Bingo. Life right now. What must I do for this? To get to this point. It might be take the next step, whatever the next step is. All right? He always has longing who hastens to see. Who hastens to see? It's a metaphor. He doesn't mean everybody who goes to the ocean is deeply searching for God. He means those who are deeply searching for God long for him. They want him. Okay? The groves take blossom. Okay, where are the groves? On the land. The groves take blossom. The cities grow. The fields brighten. The world rushes on. He's suggesting time comes, time goes. Spring, summer, fall, winter. Spring, summer, fall, winter. The cycle continues. All right? And all these urge the eager-hearted spirit to travel. When? When one has a mind to journey far over the flood. When one desires to make that journey, even the cuckoo urges with its sad voice. The cuckoo in the medieval world was held to be a harbinger of fall. That is, when you start to hear the cuckoo sing, what's that mean? Batten down the hatches.
Really? Yeah.
Winter's coming. You better start packing up. Okay?
So it's a harbinger of autumn.
Yeah. Summer's guardian, notice, announces sorrow. Why? Because as Shakespeare says, summer's lease hath all too short a date. Summer doesn't last. We like to think we're in the prime of our lives. Well, I'm not, but you guys. That our youth will last forever. No. He does not know. Not the cuckoo. but the man blessed with ease. He does not know those endure who walk most widely in the paths of exile. The person who is fat, dumb, and happy on land, the person in the city, the person in the hall, doesn't understand, doesn't know, doesn't experience what those of us who tread the paths of experience. He's drawing a juxtaposition between the person who thinks about reaching this foreign land and those who don't. Those who don't think the foreign land exists. Those who don't think the foreign land is important. Okay? Versus those who say, this is my real home. Now, hold that idea in your mind because the poet's going to come back to it. And so now my thought flies out from my breast. The thought's not flying from the mind. Okay? It's this longing. My spirit moves with the sea flood. With. It's not opposed to it. Okay? Notice, it's in tune with the waves. It's not fighting them. It's moving with them. It runs widely over the whale's home. That's this. Hwalham. Okay? So what's called a kinning. It's a Germanic figure, the kinning is. And the best way I have to define it, metaphor of or for a metaphor. So think how a metaphor works. You're comparing two things without using like or as. So, my son's a pig. Not literally, but my son's a pig. Take another metaphor of that. It's kind of hard, huh? Okay. One of the best kinnings there is in Germanic verse, one when I was taking a tutorial in Old Norse. I think it's in the Greta Saga. And there's a passage that's about 10 or 11 lines long. And what it's all getting to, these 10 or 11 lines, are merely referring to memory. It's this big, huge kinning, talking about in the back room of the storehouse of the cabin on the deck of the ship of my mind, something like that. Like 10 or 11 lines. And it's all referring to that little teeny tiny place where you store stuff that's important. The memory. Okay? Old English kinnings are easy compared to Old Norse or some of the other Germanic ones. Okay? So now my thought flies out from my breast, my spirit moves with the sea flood, roams widely over the whale's home, the ocean, to the corners of the earth, and comes back, greedy and hungry. Why does it come back greedy and hungry? Okay, she's quoting Bono, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Okay? It's possibly an allusion to the dove that gets sent out of Noah's Ark and then comes back. Why? No dry ground. Nowhere to do what? To settle. No home. This spirit goes out. It's all over the world. What does it find? Nothing that is nourishing. It comes back greedy and hungry. Nothing that's fulfilling. The lone flyer cries out, incites my heart, irresistible whale's path over the open sea. The lone crier is probably, within the context of the poem, a seabird. Okay? But what else can it be? Because what does it do? It incites my heart irresistibly to the whale's path. It's like he hears something. And it's like, what's that? Like something's calling him. and he's got to go out and find what it is. It excites my heart irresistibly to the whale's path over the open sea. Why? Because harder to me are the joys of the Lord than this dead life. Loaned on. Harder to me than what? This dead life. What does he mean? Living. The joys of the Lord are living compared to this dead life. Loaned. The word he translates loaned is this one, lana. Loaned is the way I translated that word in The Wanderer, where Liuza translates it in The Wanderer, is fleeting. Loaned and fleeting are two very different things. If I say money is fleeting, what does that mean? You have it for a while and it's gone, right? You spend it, it goes. If I say money is loaned, that means from the moment you get it, what do you know?
It's not yours.
It's not yours. It has to be given back. But if somebody gives you $100 and it's not loaned, it is a outright, it's still fleeting. It still isn't going to last. Okay? So what does he mean? Life being lana. Contrary to what our society tells us, according to this poet, none of us owns ourselves. None of us owns, none of us is quote unquote master of our destiny and captain of our fate. Okay? Our lives belong to someone else, the speaker is saying. I will never believe that earthly goods will endure forever. Why? Because the Wanderer said earthly goods are lana. Because the Wanderer said earthly goods will become waste. He says, all the treasures of God's kingdom will stand idle, worthless. So, because he doesn't believe the earthly goods will endure, always for everyone, one of three things hangs in the balance before its time. That is, for every person in this room, one of these three things is hanging in the balance right now. Why? Because we don't know what the due time is. I could literally have a massive coronary in front of your eyes and die in the next 10 seconds. Could happen. Okay? So here's the three things.
You have a pedestal.
Illness, or age, or attack by the sword, wrests life away from one doomed to die. And the phrase for doomed to die, the word there is thaya. Okay. In the Old English, I think it's thayum, doomed to die. That root there is related to the same root for feud. Okay? What is he saying? If doomed to die, and everyone is at the right time, the due time, how are you going to die? Well, here are your three choices. Old age, illness, or someone's going to kill you. It's pretty much it. It might not be they're killing you out of malice. It might be you get struck by a car. You're in a car wreck. Or it could be that, there's malice involved. Crazy student comes in and kills us all. Okay. Wacko person flies a plane into a building, all kinds of reasons. So for every man, the praise of posterity, those coming after, is the best eulogy. The best good word. So that what do you have to do? In order to earn that kind of praise, that kind of good word, that before he must be on his way, that's a beautiful little euphemism, before you have to kick the bucket, before you have to croak, before you have to pass on, before you have to repose in the Lord, before you die, he act bravely on earth against the enemy of us. Do bold deeds to beat the devil. Well, what are the bold deeds that you can do to beat the devil? These things, these ascetic feats. You can pray long hours, you can fast, you can give alms to the poor, you can pray for your enemies, you can do good to those who wish you ill, okay? Or, like in the later medieval church, about 1100 and following, you can make whips and beat yourself. Because that's what monks did. They thought they had to literally beat themselves, okay? Monks in the Western church thought that. So the sons of men will salute him afterwards. Afterwards, heaven. And his praise thereafter live with the angels forever and ever. The joy of eternal life, delight among heaven's hosts. Dram amid dugudum. Dram. Looks like dream. Okay? Not a nightmare. It's a great dream. It's one of those dreams you have that you wake up and you go, no, come back, you know. Among the Dugathum, which he translates the heavenly host, or heaven's host. Dugathum, usually in Anglo-Saxon literature, refers to your host. Band of brothers, you know, HBO series set in heaven instead of Normandy, okay? So that you earn that good word among Michael and all his warrior angels are lost. Notice, he talks about eternity, he talks about eternal joy in heaven, and then he comes back down here. The days, they're lost, they're gone. And all the pomp of this earthly kingdom, all the trappings. What word is she translating pomp? Wake up. No, that's not the word. Days are lost. No, it's not what I expected it to be. All the pomp of this earthly kingdom, there are now, notice, now, neither kings nor emperors nor gold givers as there once were. Whoever this poet is, he's writing it, or she is writing it, more than likely it's a he though, sometime between 700 and 1000 AD. What is he saying? In my day, let's say 850 AD, nice round number right between the two extremes. In 850 AD, there are not kings or princes or gold givers as there once were. Okay, we are 1200 years later, almost. Just think how much worse our kings and emperors and gold givers are today than they were in his day. Because he's saying, we don't have kings or Caesars like there used to be. We say the same kind of thing. Where are our founding fathers today? Draw that down to a personal level. The speaker is saying, you guys and me just can't hold a candle to our grandparents. And your grandparents couldn't hold a candle to their grandparents. And their grandparents couldn't hold it. So where are we in the vast scale of human, quote-unquote, development? No. It's not evolution, it's devolution. Here's the beginning, and here's where we are now. And the seafarer is somewhere up here. And he's saying, man, we're not even close to what they used to be like. So imagine how much worse we are today. when they did the greatest glorious deeds and lived in most lordly fame. All this noble host is fallen. What noble host? Humanity, I think, is what he's talking about. All of humanity. He doesn't mean theologically fallen. He means fallen, rotten, decrepit, dying. Their happiness lost. The weaker ones remain and rule the world. Weaker ones. Why? Because they're not as good as those who ruled before. We say this things like after every president. Why can't we have somebody like, if you're Democrat today, it's JFK, FDR, Harry Truman. Okay? If you're Republican, it's Reagan. Not Nixon. It's Reagan. It's Lincoln. Because TR maybe. Their happiness lost, the weaker ones remain and rule the world. Get what they can with toil. Notice, those who rule the world today, he is saying, both in and our day. Why do they rule the world? To get what they can. Toil with work. What does that mean, get what they can? Do you think this Anglo-Saxon author understood the idea, I'm going to spell it wrong, of perks?
You spelled it right.
Actually, this way, because it's from perquisite. Okay. You know, what perks did an Anglo-Saxon king have? Did he have air, or did he have,
He had a big
stallion
ship.
one?
Probably had a big ship.
Might have had a, boat one,
Yeah.
Okay. There had to be perks that went with the job. We know there were perks in ancient Greece. It's, if you're familiar with Oedipus the king, why Creon tells Oedipus, when Oedipus accuses him of conspiring with Tiresias, he goes, why would I want your job? I have all the perks that come with being your brother-in-law. Without any of the headaches. It would be like being president and having all the perks that go with being president without having to deal with those pesky Russians. Or Bashar Assad. Or, the Republican Capitol Hill, if you're a Democrat. Or, No. Joy is laid low. In other words, here, now, in this world, there is no real joy. The earth's nobility grows old and withers, weaklings, just like every man throughout Middle Earth. Nobility, he means the high and mighty. They grow old and wither, just like the rest of us. What good does it do to become one of the high and mighty? What happens to them? They die. What happens to us? We die. You're at Hamlet, Act 5. And the gravedigger scene. And the gravedigger throws up a skull. And Hamlet, this could have been Alexander the Great. And this dirt might be Alexander's body. Boy, isn't that a thought. Alexander the Great being used to stop a bunghole in a cask. There's the use of a king. As much as any peasant. Because Hamlet sees death as the great equalizer. Okay? Old age overtakes him. That is, every man. Old age overtakes him. His face grows pale. The gray beard grieves. He knows his old friends, offspring of princes, meaning they ought to be princes too, have been given up to. Nobility doesn't buy you squat. When life fails him, his fleshly cloak will neither taste the sweet nor touch the sore, nor move a hand nor think with his mind. Well, who's he really talking about? I mean, yes, he about every person. He is talking about all of us. But he's also, I think, more specifically referring to the man at ease on land. The man who doesn't think at all about the journey. And death creeps up and takes him. And you put him in the ground, and what does his body feel? Nothing. Though a brother may wish to strew his brother's grave with gold. Okay? About once a year, we have archaeologists discover in England, okay, Anglo-Saxon burials. A person is buried, and they find swords and gold and helmets and shields. There was just one announced last week. It wasn't an Anglo-Saxon warrior. It was a teenage girl. And she was buried on a bed with a big old cross on her chest. Dates from around 700, so it's pretty soon after Christianity comes. No, there are a couple of vampire corpses discovered in Bulgaria. Okay. How do they know they were vampires? Because they had metal rods through the heart. Just go to show that Dracula isn't a modern invention, because these things dated from, I think it was around 900 AD. Okay, so the whole vampire idea goes way back.
Didn't they find, like, a year ago or something like that, they discovered one of their missing kings? England did?
Yeah.
Richard III.
Richard III?
Just
They found him under a parking lot.
almost a year ago in Lincoln, yeah. Yep.
I'm trying to
The
remember.
Hunchback King that Shakespeare badly maligned.
I'm trying to remember, did he actually have any sort of deformity?
Yeah, he has scoliosis. If you look at his skeleton, his back looks like this.
Yay!
Okay, his backbone. This isn't, looking from, like, if you were laying flat like this. This is looking at him, like if you were looking at me, so that he was like this, which is why Shakespeare portrays him as having a hunchback. He didn't have a hunchback because he didn't have a big old massive hump back here. He was like this because he couldn't straighten up. And his head was hacked. Had some pieces missing from his skull. So, though a brother may wish to strew his brother's grave with gold. Why? Well, in pagan Germanic burials, when there were burials and not just cremations, okay, they would fill them with grave goods. And there are Anglo-Saxon Christian burials with some grave goods. Thinking, according to the anthropologists, who I don't put a lot of credence in, on this idea at least, that they are to ease their way into heaven. That the gold somehow, you go up to St. Peter and you go, hey Pete, here's a golden shilling. Take this and... No. Bury him among the dead with myriad treasures to take with him. See, the Anglo-Saxon poet is suggesting that there were burials with all this material designed to aid them in the afterlife. That gold will be useless before the terror of God for the soul that is full of sin. In other words, you can't buy off God. And this is before the medieval Catholic practice of indulgences, which we'll talk about later when we get to Chaucer. Okay? For the soul that is full of sin, the gold he had hidden while he lived here on earth. What is one of the duties of an Anglo-Saxon king? From what I said last week. What does he do for the Thanes who fight for him?
He's generous.
He's generous. He distributes treasure. He distributes gold. A good Anglo-Saxon king, and you'll see this when we get to Beowulf. You'll see it crystal clear. A good Anglo-Saxon king always distributes treasure. He never hoards it. A bad Anglo-Saxon king or Germanic king always hoards treasure. Takes it and says, mine. Like a dragon. There's a reason why dragons go to sleep on mounds of gold. They're like gold accountants. They know every piece of their treasure, which is why Smaug in Tolkien's The Hobbit realizes when Bilbo takes a little cup. He knows every single piece of treasure. Tolkien rips that off, by the way, completely from the Old English poem Beowulf. Okay? So, the gold will be useless. Why? Because it was useless on earth. Because he didn't give it away. He didn't distribute it. Great is the terror of God. The earth trembles before it. He established the sturdy foundations. That is, God did. What are the sturdy foundations? The land that the guy who's fat, dumb, and happy is living a life of ease on. The earth's solid surface, heavens. The psalmist says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. What does that mean? Everything. This plastic bottle is God's. This marker is God's. You are God's. I am God's. The computer is God's. I know MTSU thinks it belongs. It doesn't. Okay? Not according to the psalmist. He established the blah, blah, blah. Foolish is he who dreads not the Lord. Why? Because what does Proverbs say? The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Okay? So the fool doesn't fear God. Death will find him unprepared. Why will he be unprepared? Because he's not worried what happens after death. If he has no fear of the Lord, he has no fear of judgment or reward. He has no fear. Okay? So he'll be unprepared. How many of you have read Harry Potter novels? Most of you. Okay? Book 5, don't mention any names other than Harry and nearly had to say. Book 5 at the end, Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix. Harry goes to seek out nearly had to Snick, who's a ghost, to ask, what happens when you die? And he's asking because of the died. Okay? And Nick says he won't come back. Harry's like, what do you mean he won't come back? Why not? He will have gone on. Why? Because he was prepared. Why is Nick a ghost? He feared death. He wasn't prepared to go on. I argue when I teach Harry Potter novels, I think the Harry Potter novels ultimately are about one thing: preparing for death. In fact, if I ever write the book that I've got written up here, the whole purpose is to learn how to die well. Because you can die poorly. You can die horribly. Okay? Or you can die well. You can die magnificently. You can die beautifully. What's it? Preparation. Okay? That's what the speaker's talking about. Blessed is he who lives humbly. So foolish is he who lives unprepared. Blessed is he who lives humbly. Well, how do you live humbly? First of all, you're not puffed up with wine and you're not proud. Humbly implies what else, though? You don't fight. You don't kick against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. What do? Like on the ocean, you ride waves. And when the wave's really high and life's really great, you enjoy it. And when you're back down in the trough, you endure it. Okay? And you say, like Job, this too is from God. Okay? That's what the speaker is suggesting here. That mercy comes to him from heaven. The Maker strengthens his spirit, for he believes in his might. How do those two work? The Maker strengthens his spirit, for he believes in his might. Which comes first? God strengthening his spirit, therefore he believes in God's might? Or he believes in God's might, therefore God strengthens his spirit? Neither. They're both happening simultaneously. It's synergy. sync together with energy, action. They're moving completely, perfectly in tandem. On the earthly plane, aware of what God is doing? Not at all. Is the one on the heavenly plane aware of what the human is doing? Okay. A man must steer a strong mind and keep it. Steer. What does the wanderer continually say? Don't boast. Don't make promises. Until what? Until you know how your heart is going to respond. So a man must steer a strong mind. If you have a strong mind, and he probably means by that something like a proud spirit, what must you do? Why, if you ride horses, why do you have reins and a bridle and bit? Imagine a horse, a stallion in here, and me standing next to it. Which one's bigger? Which one's more powerful? The horse, thank you. And if I'm on top of the horse, at whose mercy am I? Until I stick a bit in its mouth and attach a bridle and reins. Because then what can I do? I can control that horse. Well, how different is that than crawling in behind the wheel of your car, which is a whole lot more powerful than a horse. It's probably anywhere from 70 horse to 150 horsepower. Okay? But even that is not nearly as powerful as this thing. That's why I think, I'm forgetting his first name, Oppenheimer, when they detonated the first atomic bomb in Alamogordo, New Mexico, said, I am death. I am the destroyer of worlds. He realized when he saw the explosion, this is no longer just a cool physicist experiment. This is no longer, taking top prize at the science fair. He realized, oops, I can't put that genie back in the bottle. Once they saw that, okay, you must steer a strong mind and do what? Keep it stable. What does that mean? Keep it from jerking all over the place. Control it, manage it, govern it. Steadfast in promises. That is, I won't go into politics. If you make a promise, the promise. If you make a vow, keep the vow. If you make a boast, and you're a good pagan Anglo-Saxon Germanic warrior, fulfill that boast. If you're going to kill Grendel, by God, kill Grendel, or die trying. Pure in its ways. That is, the means that are used to achieve the boast or the promise. Every man must hold in moderation his love for a friend and his hatred for a foe. Why? I mean, it's kind of understandable, right? How you should hold in moderation love for a friend. I mean, it is possible to love someone too much, right? Stalker possibly, or you put all of your joy and happiness and then that person stabs you in the back. Kind of sucks. What about the hatred for a foe, though? What did the United States do to Germany and Japan during World War II in terms of our propaganda? What did we turn German and Japanese soldiers into? Objects of hatred? Keep going. We demonize them. Why? It's a lot easier to kill people who aren't like you. And I don't mean not like you, a different race. Different skin color, eye shape. Not that. Okay? There, in The Lord of the Rings, the real one, not the horrible thing, Gandalf tells Frodo in the first book that Gollum, is descended from hobbit-like creatures. And Frodo's like, no, can't be. I've refused. It's like, you can refuse to believe whatever you want, but it's still true. Why does Frodo have such a hard time believing it?
There's a moment earlier that you had hoped that Bilbo would just kill
Yeah,
the chance.
'twas a pity that Bilbo did not stab the vile creature when he had the chance. His words exactly. Why else though? Why do we still say today, you read in history books today, Hitler was a madman, or Hitler was possessed, or Hitler had syphilis. Why? Because one of us would never be dead. Really? I'm not going to cast aspersions on you. Hitler has nothing on me. I wanted to let my mind go that direction. The Gestapo, child's play compared with the toy I come up with. That's what the speaker is implying. Okay, you got to rein that in. C.S. about his novel Screw Tape Letters, which got him on the cover of Time magazine. All right, because he was asked about it. It's, you know, before the Chronicles of Narnia, it was his most popular thing. And he said in an interview, it was his least favorite book to write. He did not enjoy writing it for one simple reason. It was easy. It was too easy to enter into the mind of Satan. Because all he had to do was take all those inhibitions, his conscience, his system of morality, and kind of set it on the table for a moment. And then just say, okay, run free, and then just write. Okay? His hatred for a foe must be held in moderation. Why? Because your foe is like you. Though he may wish him full of fire, or his friend consumed on a funeral. There's something, a couple of lines missing in the manuscript. Fate is greater, the maker mightier than any man's thoughts. The word there is weird. It's not really fate. It's what will be. Okay? Is greater, the maker mightier than any man's thoughts. Why does he include that? After this part about, hold in moderation your hatred for your enemy. Well, there is always the possibility your enemy is on that same voyage. Maybe you're on the first class deck of the Titanic. He's down in the hold. Okay? Think of the, because I think the poet probably is. Think of Matthew 25, if you're familiar with it, and the parable of the Last Judgment. Christ speaks to two groups of people. Okay? And to one group he says, go into the kingdom, you are blessed. You. And he goes, those of you who go into the kingdom, when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me water. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was an orphan, you helped me. When I was a widow, you provided for me. And some of them are going to say, Lord, when did we do this? You've done it under the least of these. Okay? Well, who are those who are saying, Lord, when did we do it to you? They aren't all the quote-unquote Christians. How do you know? Because there are going to be other people who are going to say, Lord, we cast out demons in your name. We did this, this, and this. And he's going to say, yep, go to hell. I never knew you. Why? Because they never provided the cold drink. They never gave the food. They never clothed the naked. Okay? In other words, suggesting we think we know who should go to hell and who should go to heaven. But God's thoughts are mightier. That is, our thoughts aren't God's thoughts. Let us consider should have our home. Not let us consider where others should have their home. There's a local church that has a bus. It used to have this bus. The church used to be across the street. That had flames, there's a red bus, had flames, yellow and orange flames, and it had writing on the side, pulling souls out of hell one at a time. The implication being the natural state of souls is in hell. I don't know about you, if you have a theology or not, but that's a screwy theology, whatever way one looks at it. He is saying, let's consider where our home is, not where somebody else's is, and then think how we may come there, not how others may not. So how do we come there? It's what he's been talking about the whole poem. Do the journey. Okay? Do the quote-unquote ascetic feats, whatever they are. The speaker isn't saying there's one set, like, Nerling has to learn to read Old English so he can read the Old English homilies of Alfred. And Gregory's got to learn Greek so he can, read the lives of the fathers in Greek and go on around the world. He's saying each person, you got to find your way. And let us strive to reach that place of eternal blessedness, where life is found in the love of the Lord, hope in heaven. Why? There's no hope here. There's no hope in stuff here. Bank accounts aren't big enough. Okay? People aren't reliable enough. Now, how do both poems describe heaven? Is it the proverbial, cloud where you're sitting up there with your little harp going, oh, kumbaya, Lord, kumbaya, Jesus. Oh, look, they're having a weenie roast down in hell. I'd much rather be down there. Because they're joking, they're laughing, they're drinking, they're having... No. The implication of heaven in both poems is a feast. Yebershipa. Think Cadman's feast and, put it on 100 gallons of Red Bull or something. I mean, just jack it up with caffeine. It's a party. How long? Eternity. It's Valhalla baptized, where everyone has a blast. Forever. It never ends. And there's no hangovers. On and on and on. Okay? All right, let's stop there. Don't bother reading ahead, because we probably won't.